Okay, so let's go over some options for sitting in a chair, since most of us are doing that a lot during our day. There's no wrong way to sit in a chair, but there are some ways we can optimize what we're trying to do in our training and our body care so that we're not kind of sending signals two different directions. Let me tell you what I mean. So in our body care work, we're really trying to get that nice stack of the rib cage and the pelvis so that they're sitting like this with each other. One of the common ways we go the opposite way and kind of signal to our body to not stack is when we're sitting in a chair. What we'll do often is do things like starting to arch our back forward. Personally, I notice I do that when I'm getting really focused or stressed. I'll catch myself and I've been starting to pull myself towards the computer rather than stay in my kind of relaxed stance. In addition, another thing we can often do is sit on one foot, which takes our pelvis and kind of makes it a bit more lopsided. Interestingly, we train ourselves to be so good at that is actually going to feel more comfortable than what I'm about to show you, at least in the beginning. But if you stick with it, it's going to feel a lot more comfortable as your physical training and body care work starts to match up with how you're sitting at your desk. So let's go over this here. With your chair, you want something that I think we all kind of understand. We want our knees to be bent at a 90, same with our hips. So when we have those taller chairs or even a Swiss ball that's a little bit overinflated, your hips are up a bit high, and so that can make it a little harder to find that stacked position. So play with chairs around your house. I love this dining room chair for me, for my desk, and find your seat so that you feel the bottom of your pelvis on the base of the chair, and it's those sits bones that are right at the bottom. Feel for that. Then from there, notice that if I were to sit all the way back, then I'm reclining, but then if I sit forward, it's too tempting to start to do that tip forward. So this is where some props are really handy. So find a pillow or a folded up towel would work really good too, and put it behind you so that you have support, but that is not super rigid nor super squishy so that you fall back. You want something that just meets you when you're sitting on your sits bones right at the lower spine, kind of upper pelvis area. Then from there, with your feet directly underneath your knees and pointed forward, and the knees directly over the ankles, find your comfortable stance there. This will depend on your limb length and where you're at in your process of finding your stack. What I mean by that is, when I first started really attending to my sitting in this new way for myself, I actually had to have something under my feet initially because it just didn't feel tolerable with my feet flat. So find a nice thick book or something like that. This one in particular is like the greatest story of all time. Yes, the host, I love it. So take that, put it underneath your feet, and you'll feel that almost instantly when you find an object of the right height, it feels like you just feel like you can relax in that position rather than tensing yourself up. Then from there, you can go about doing your work, whether your laptop's low or your desktop is high or you've got your laptop propped up, you can do your work from there. Initially, you're probably not going to feel comfortable with this, as comfortable as you feel in your other seated positions. So set a timer, 20 minutes of sitting like this, and then let yourself spend 40 minutes sitting, whatever other way you like to sit when you're at your desk. Now, let's take a look at standing posture. Okay, so now let's talk about standing position and posture. Again, there's no one right way to do standing posture. And in fact, having a variety of them that you can move through and be comfortable and maintain your stack is really beneficial. So if we want to help ourselves with our standing posture to kind of match the signal we're sending when we do our body care and our physical training, we want to be able to find our heels. So to find our heels, just look down at your feet for a minute and notice when you're standing, can you lift your toes up at all? If you can't, chances are it's because you're leaned forward and it's really hard to lift your toes because all your weight's forward. So the reason that happens often is because if you check the pelvis out, what we tend to like to do in our pelvis is actually shift our weight forward and again, arch that back so we have a slight tip forward. And I think personally, a lot of us have learned about tipping the pelvis and making sure we're not too arched forward and that we're not also too tucked underneath. But it's amazing how much more aware of that you become as you learn to work with your pelvis and your hamstrings. If you'll recall, when we do our supine 90-90 exercise, you start engaging your hamstrings to curl that pelvis up. we want those hamstrings to do that work when you're standing too, so that they stay engaged and keep your pelvis in the right position. So to do that, all you need to do is just, if you're someone who locks your knees, so if you check that out, it's just pushing the knees back. If you're someone who does that, first, just unlock your knees. Simple as that to start. That will automatically help move you in a better direction. Then, if you're someone who notices that you shift your weight onto one leg or forward, like this, or this, or this, start to center between the 2 feet and feel for your heels. And by feeling for your heels, literally just feel the heels pressing down more than the toes are. It's as simple as that. And you can always check yourself by saying, could I actually even lift my toes right now? When you do that, you automatically go from being someone who stands with a little bit of an arch perhaps in their back, or a little bit of an excessive butt tuck and kind of pushing the hips forward, to someone who has soft knees, who has their weight back in their heels, and from there their hamstrings are able to help the pelvis to stay in a good position. From there, you'll start to feel more comfortable over time, and if you still want to shift to one leg or the other, you can totally do that. Just when you're shifting from one leg to the other, let's find our heels and let's keep our knee soft, even on the straight leg, so that you're not locking it back behind you, but rather just keeping a soft engagement with it so that the hamstring can stay attached. Now I have one more tip for you about sitting that I want to give you for chairs that are not so traditional in terms of chairs. So let's look at that now. Okay, so we aren't always in a nice, easy dining room chair type of setup. Often we're on bar stools or countertop stools, or these higher chairs that don't have a back, that don't have good feet on the bottom, and you want to know what to do with that, because again, these are going to contribute to signals that your body has to respond to, because you'll have to position yourself on them. So let's check this out. With these chairs, it's very common to find a way to center and stabilize yourself by way of tipping the pelvis forward, locking the toes onto the front bar that's on the bottom, or locking the feet around like this. Now, if you're someone who's tall and your legs go all the way to the ground, this whole thing probably won't apply to you, but most of us don't quite reach all the way to the floor when we're sitting on stools. So here's a way to help yourself out with this, because if you're sitting here a lot, that's a signal. Let's make it work well relative to the physical care that we're doing for our body. So what you can do is bring your heels forward so that your heels rest on the front bar that is on the bottom of the stool. Then from there, learn to find comfort in sitting a little bit back. These stools naturally make you want to get towards the bar or the countertop or whatever you're sitting on. And again, like standing, there's no one right way to do it. You can get here a little bit, maybe when you're eating or hanging out and listening to a friend or something like that. But every now and again, check yourself and make sure that you haven't started to press up onto your toes, wrap your feet around, or find some other way to pull yourself forward. We just want to give your body the chance to say, hey, check it out. Heels are connected. From there, I can relax on my sits bones and keep the stack of the pelvis into the chest. To me, this is the hardest chair to manage, my stack, because the heels on is not natural and comfortable for most people initially, and so it's very uncomfortable and you're constantly having to shift. In addition, the chair just automatically makes you want to go forward. It makes you want to sit this way rather than centered, where you were when we were standing and when we were sitting in the chair. So next time you're in chairs like this, just take note of what your lower legs are doing. Ideally, what I love the most is when you go to a restaurant and they've got the table that has the leg piece on it, that has like the bar on the bottom for your leg. Those are great, because then you can put your feet up on that and they can just relax and your heels can drop down. If you don't have that, bring those heels forward on the chair itself, on the bar at the bottom, and then use that as your seated posture. Okay, I hope these tips help you out and allow you to encompass more of the signaling we're sending into your daily life, not just when we're doing our physical activity.